tell us that, for
No, this
instance,
is his
sharing a
review.
tongue is, of course, something that, everyone kind of gets used to, and sharing a tongue is a bond so deep, and that's correct. I mean, imagine if you're in a subway in New York City, and all of a sudden, you hear somebody speaking Farsi. The very first thing that you're going to do is like, oh my God, they are, Iranian, or, they are from Pakistan, or, however, wherever, you feel very comfortable with. And it is the case that it's a very real case in our lives. And Rumi tells a different side of this. Of course, the tongue of intimacy is set apart beyond mere words. It's being one at heart. So he encourages us to be more, more in tune with the tongue of intimacy. And that is the intimacy that he's talking about, of course, is from his vision, as we talked about it, is, the intimate relationship that Rumi is having with his creator. And in this case, he refers to him as his lover. And so the tongue of intimacy is set apart beyond mere words. It's being one at heart by verbal and nonverbal intimations. Our hearts give thousands of interpretations. So it's very interesting when you speak from the heart, or when, imagine if you were to help somebody who is not who speaks a different language, and you're not speaking the same language, but you just feel that that person is in need of help. And if you actually walk up and offer help, what happens is that immediately that person just shows a graceful attitude and face. I mean, it's universal. When people are trying to thank you, or when people are very happy about how a gesture has resonated with them. So the tongue of intimacy is universal. It's something that everyone fully understands, and they are all fully in tune with. And that's one thing that Rumi brings in here, that by verbal and nonverbal intimations, our hearts give thousands of interpretations. And that's how hearts actually start connecting, and they get closer to each other, because it is that universal language that they speak, and that universal language just brings everyone together. So that was that. You remember that the story, that it was about the crow and the hoopoe. I mean, the fact that the two birds were talking. The hoopoe was telling the Solomon that I can actually find water for you, and then the crow came back and said, hey, this guy, if he was so capable of finding water for himself, how come he also gets captured by hunters, and he can't see what they have laid out for him? And the hoopoe refers to this thing, that when things are supposed to happen, and that's God's will, there is no way that I can escape that, regardless of how much vision or knowledge I have. If it is God's will, it is God's will, and it has to happen the way it's supposed to happen. That is a very, very, again, it's a very, very, important subject for us to remember. And that is, going back to the fact that how much in our hearts we trust the God's will, and what is supposed to happen as it unfolds in front of us. So we have to be also careful, and um, of course, conscious of it. So next, the
Mohsen,
yes.
before we leave this subject, just a couple of observations I'd like to make. Trying to figure out, in my mind, the use of these two birds, the crow and the hod, or the, what you call it,
Hoopoe.
hoopoe,
Hoopoe, yeah.
is not accidental.
No, no, not at all.
There's something here to be conveyed
That's true.
by these choices of these two birds. And all I could come up with that one of them signifies the notion of intuition and discovery, and one that essentially denies intuition and discovery. So,
And how do you interpret intuition?
so because Hoopo, from the distance in the sky, can identify that there is water underground
Right.
that is not visible to a naked eye. Nobody else can see that, but he can see it. That's his intuition.
Okay.
And that he can discover. And Crow comes in total disagreement with him without really knowing the depth or the detail of this bird's knowledge. Says no, he's lying.
True. And but Crow actually makes a good argument, though. He says if he can see so well, why is he captured? Why does he get captured?
Well, yeah. Then of course he gave the Hoopo says, well, it's out of my control because I got blinded by.
Again, he says if it is God's will, if
Right.
it's supposed to be, he says, he says, if you don't have an ounce of faithfulness, you're like a coach of lust and filthiness. So
Right.
basically, it's like you've got to have a faith into how things are supposed to unfold. And that is something that in his eyes, the way he looks at it is that I actually do my best not to get captured. But if it has to happen, again, in the line before that, he says this. He says, the crow who would deny God's will. This is basically what's the difference between these two animals. One is fully accepting of God's will, and another one is fully, fully intertangled with his own abilities as he sees them. And plus the fact that because he gets to live a long life, to him, he is a little bit of, there's certain level of invincibility to him. So that, if God really wanted me gone, he would have. Therefore, I get to be around. I get to eat whatever. Last time I remember you mentioned that, crows used to steal soaps and all that. And of course, if you give soap to any creature, they probably will die from it, except this guy. He can just do, and they're extremely smart animals, by the way. If you have seen, certain demonstration of that on the internet, they're extremely smart about what they go after and so forth. So they definitely have this smartness and also the longevity of life. And that's, so it allows them to live a little bit of a riskier life than the rest of the animals. So I think, as you said, it's definitely not an accident that he picked these two birds. But the mere function or the mere meaning behind it is the fact that one is fully submissive to the will of God. He still does what he needs to do. He is very well aware of his capabilities. He's very well aware of it, because he says that from the sky, I can actually look down and I can tell you where the sweet water is. So that's a unique capability. However, I also might just, go down and get captured. And that happens. So it's a very interesting distinction between the two that we should be aware of. But thank you for bringing that up. Any other points?
I guess that's the main. Like if the crow is relying on his own ability and denying God, and the hope is talented but defers to God.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes down to your own abilities, that is, and again, Rumi does not say that you shouldn't deny your abilities. It's just that you also have to remember who gave you these abilities and be extremely not only thankful, but submissive to his will, because sometimes your abilities are not going to get you out of the ditch that you may think you're in. Right. Okay, cool. This is good.
Just one more thing on the same page on the top. So just right there it says Solomon asked, well, Hupo, is this true? Are dregs in the first class I've served by you?
Dregs is like, basically it's the unfiltered wine and what it actually is left from that. So it's like the first glass that you're giving me, is this something that has got unfiltered or something that's not pure? You're not being truthful with me. Is that what I'm getting from you, basically?
So the reason that is using that analogy is apparently in the winemaking business. When the wine is ready, the wine master, the first glass that they take from the wine is supposed to be clear.
Right.
And if it's not clear, the wine is not good.
That's true. That's very true.
So he says, this is our first interaction, he's telling the Hupo. He says, look, we just met. And at the beginning, are you trying to give me this glass with the stretch in it? Which means you're going to give me something that's bad? Don't do that.
Right.
So that's the analogy that's using.
Yeah. Very true. Yeah. Thank you for that as well.
Yeah.
Okay. Good. How is the household of Aziza and Sunny doing?
It's going well.
Perfectly.
Okay, good. All right. Okay. So we're going to go to the next story. So the story of Adam. Now, it's an interesting story, and there's a few points that you all gonna enjoy, I'm sure. It's talking about destiny blinded his sight. He's referring to Adam. So he failed to observe the message, and the message was that there is a forbidden fruit and you're not supposed to have it, and to refrain from interpreting it differently. Okay. Now, let's go through it, and we're gonna talk through this, of course. So he taught the names to Adam at the start. Thus, knowledge filled our ancestors' pure heart. Now, in this case, this is immediately he's referring to the ayah from Surah Baqarah, ayah 31. Which is basically the fact that Adam was taught, and I'm going to just share this screen with you so we're clear about it. Okay. So in here, he's saying that, and this is he referring to God, taught Adam all the names of everything. Then he showed them to angels and said, tell me the names of these if you are truthful. Let's read the rest of this together, because the next 4 or 5 ayah, they're very interesting ones. So they, of course, the angels said, glory be to you. We have no knowledge except what you have taught us. Verily, it is you, the all-knower, the all-wise. He said, and that's God, O Adam, inform them. So he tells Adam to teach the angels of their names. And basically, the names that, Adam had been taught, he teaches them back to the angels. And when he had informed them of their names, he said, and then after, this is done, then God says, did I not tell you that I know the ghaib or unseen in the heavens and the earth, and I know what you reveal and what you have been concealing? So this is after the angels are taught the names that were taught to Adam. And then the next ayah says, and remember when we said to angels, prostrate yourselves before Adam, and they prostrated except Iblis or Satan. He refused and was proud and was one of the disbelievers. So basically, it's the it's the story of how Iblis or Satan is now basically kicked out, or basically is now kind of carved out of the whole the gatherings of the angels. And we said, oh Adam, do well, you and your wife, in the paradise, and eat both of you freely with pleasure and delight of things therein, as wherever you will, but come not near this tree, or you both will be the zalimun, or wrongdoers. And that's basically, again, the fact that the forbidden fruit and so forth. And then of course then Satan made up the lip, made them slip therefrom the paradise, and got them out from that in which they were. We said, get you down all with enmity between yourselves. On earth will be a dwelling place for you and an enjoyment for a time. So basically that's how then Adam descended. Of course, Adam and Eve descended to earth, and alongside of them, of course, it's Iblis. And then Adam received from his Lord words, and his Lord pardoned him, accepted his repentance. Verily, he is the one who forgives or accepts repentance, the most merciful. So in this case, what we need to remember is that Adam takes responsibility for what he does, and he repents. And that's when God basically takes that and forgives him. And the other, of course, the opposite of it is Satan, whereas Satan comes back and says that it was not me who did this, it was you who actually made me do it. So therefore, he was not apologetic about this. Now, thinking through this, and we're gonna, and Rumi is gonna open up these 6-7 ayahs for us as we actually read this, because it's important for us to remember what are the Quranic verses and how they are used in this thing, and of course how Rumi intends to use them, and how he sees them beyond of course his wisdom. So he taught names to Adam at the start. Thus knowledge filled our ancestors' pure heart. So basically that's what God did. The names of things which showed how they turn out were granted to his soul to rid all doubt. So basically all the names were given to Adam so that he would be more sincere in his belief, and he would also, of course, these names would have helped him. So each name that he'd assign would therefore last. What he called slow did not then turn out fast. So as what was assigned to it, so it's interesting that what Rumi is trying to say is that this wisdom and knowledge that perhaps mankind is receiving at the moment, or it's at the position that they are actually getting more and more of it as we go forward. This wisdom and knowledge is something that is within us, and we're just untapping it. And we're untapping it at every instant, and we're just realizing it and manifesting it into our daily lives and so forth.
And
So
I wish this translator wouldn't dwell on the word name so much, because that's not, as you said, really the intent is the knowledge that the God gave, not necessarily
right.
the name of things.
But yeah, you're right. But even Rumi specifically talks about name, ism, and even in Quran, it's talking about asma or ism. So hold on for a second, because Rumi is going to unfold an interesting interpretation of this very quickly. So
Okay.
he says, so the faithful at the end of time he knew, and those who turn out unbelievers too. So it's like names are things that would eventually shape up people's destiny. And that's an interesting fact. So you look at, again, according to Rumi, of course, he's like, everyone who's been given a specific name would eventually accept or adapt the attributes and characteristics that name would instill in him. Okay. So it's like, so learn the names of things as he decrees. He taught the names, holds all. He taught the names, holds all the mysteries. So it's like, then therefore it's interesting. This is something that you should know, that when God said and that's the ayah 31 of Surah Baqarah, when God said that I actually taught him, basically, when I taught him the mysteries, he meant it. And now he's started to give us an example of what those mysteries were. So for Moses, simply called his stick a rod, while snake was what had been assigned by God. Does that make sense? Did this example open anything up? It hasn't. Okay, let's go to the next one.
Yeah.
Omar meant polytheist once in the past, although it's named believer at Alast, and Alast means in the day of judgment. So the name Omar, the second Khalifa, of course, is originally meant that somebody who would worship idols or many idols. But his name eventually meant the believer. Okay, what is he trying to say here? Let's see. Our names are like a seed that's just been sown before God is the fruit that's finally grown. Okay, so it's like the best example I can use for you guys, and I think this thing is going to finally show up. And unfortunately, I got to use some Farsi words here, but bear with me. So one of the names of God is Sattar, right? And Sattar means whoever is, the attribute of Sattar is that it would, cover up or hide, right? But in our lives, we also
hide somebody's deficiencies.
Exactly. But again, it would cover. I mean, it's a cover. It's something that would basically not let you see, right? So in our lives, we use a wall sometimes to cover up, or sometimes we use a veil, or sometimes we use shades, or sometimes we use drapes. And what he basically means is that the drape and the wall and the shapes and these things are the derivatives of the word Sattar. Does that make sense? So Sattar, with all of its derivatives, is what was taught to Adam, which that's where it brings that wisdom. Are we making sense here?
I mean, it's something like the archetypes. right?
Yeah. Okay, that's actually a better way. Yeah. Go ahead and
Like there's like the abstract, like
exactly.
yeah, the abstractness of a thing, uh, the abstract idea of a thing that that is like it's the abstract class and then something maybe instantiated.
I get it. Yeah. So in programming languages, yeah, now you're actually going into. I see where you're going with that, but you're right. What it is that it holds everything. It basically holds anything that is a derivative of that specific abstract meaning. Okay.
This is a secret thing, though. Like our language, I mean, those names are not necessarily known to lay people.
It's not known to many people, and people don't even think through when it comes down to knowledge from this angle. They don't. What they think through is that we have lived our lives and we have basically gone through iterations after iterations of living and experiences and all the back and forth, and finally we have unfolded and discovered what we know as our knowledge right now, right? But what Rumi is trying to say is that from the get-go, when Adam was created and Adam was given life by God, blowing in him from his own breath, he also taught him his names, which his names are all that abstract class, which contain all the derivatives of those names. Okay, so that's why he's now using this example of the rod and the snake. Is like, yeah, you saw a stick and you called it a rod. However, in reality, it can also be a snake. And it's just that those are all attributes of what you think is a rod. Okay.
Yeah, I feel like there's an element of like when it comes to like naming things is a reflection of their true reality.
Mm-hmm.
But that is not that's not known to people. It's known to God.
Very true. So since you said that, now it actually makes sense when he is trying to say that our names for things convey the way they are seen, their inner nature are what God's name mean. So we see something. So in all fairness, what he's also trying to say is this. So for instance, your name is Mateen. And whether you see this or you don't see this name actually is giving you a certain level of attributes, certain characteristics, whether you agree with it or not. It just means what the true meaning of that word is at the end.
Exactly right. So if you have a son that is born and you name him Attila, everybody expects something from this Attila.
Right.
As opposed to if you call him somebody that's known to be kind, I don't know, you give me an example, then subconsciously everybody expects him to be kind.
True. So
question.
Attila, I don't know what Attila really means though.
Attila the Hun?
Who is that?
Is it the mythical character that was very vicious?
Oh, really? He was.
Yeah.
I thought Attila is it's a Southern American name, right? It's a. I think
no. I think it's a ancient mythical character from the Orient.
I don't have any knowledge.
I may be mistaken. I'm not sure.
But that's good to know. Yeah. Yes, Mohsen.
Is it not trying to say that we know the names and certain attribute of that names, but the creator knows way depths of that name, not only the description and the look and some of the properties, but also it is much deeper or much more comprehensive, the knowledge of God with the same name.
Actually, so what it's trying to say is that the names of God are much more comprehensive,
Yes.
and it's within us as well. So we have it. We have it within us. The only thing is we haven't discovered it yet. So because we haven't discovered it yet, we are still kind of struggling with them. So what we discover is what unfolds before us. And he's trying to tell us that you can't be waiting for these things to unfold. You have to remember that these things are within you. You have to discover them. So basically, it's that elme ladoni, something that's within you regardless. When you tap into it and once you find it, it brings a certain level of, needlessness. So you're not going to be needing anything anymore, because that knowledge is a knowledge that is liberating. But unfortunately, we go towards our mind and we try to capture knowledge from our mind. And our mind is where we think is the source of knowledge. Whereas he is trying to tell us that the source of knowledge is something that was given to us when God had given us his breath.
I think the key word here is at the beginning of this section, which is the direct translation of the Quran that you just read, is in past tense. It says he taught him the names.
That's
instead
true.
of making it like more like he's teaching him the names or will teach him the names. He says he did it. In other words, he gave the Adam the ability to learn.
Right. So basically, he was able to. That's true. Again, it's something that again he was able to gain, and he was able to perhaps uncover and unfold as it's going forward. Yeah.
And just for whatever it's worth, I don't know whether you can see. Oh, you can't see it. If you just Attila the Hun was a ruler in 400 BC, and it was very vicious.
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
Yeah. Anyway,
that's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you're right. I mean, in Farsi, for instance, sometimes I wonder why would people, name their children, for instance, Afrasiab.
Right. They want them to show some kind of a strength and some kind of a.
I know, but it's interesting. Nobody likes the name Rostam, although he's actually a much better, warrior in Shahnameh.
More courageous.
But they actually like that other name, and to them it's interesting that once I actually tried to listen to somebody as they were explaining the what they thought was the mystical knowledge of Afrasiab. Afrasiab is purely coming from the dark side, and he only instigates that every time Rostam is not working with his inner lightness, Afrasiab shows up, and then Rostam then basically responds and eventually prevails and wins and all that stuff. So I don't know. Again, it's something that baffles me, but again, that's a different thing. So let's go forward. So that's why also when he's talking about the when so he used the name Omar. He used the of course the name of a stick or a rod, and now he's saying our names are like a seed that's just been sown before God is the fruit that's finally grown. So basically, it's just this seed is something that's within every single one of us, and then it just manifests in different ways as we see it. And he says, in non-existence, seeds are just a form. Existent with the Lord, they must transform. So the form of what we see is something that is clear to us because it's a form and we're able to see it. But as these things, if they want to actually elevate up, they have to transform these names. So the names manifest into a form. If these forms need to actually elevate and become one with God, they have to transform. They cannot stay in that form that they are at least manifested here. And in the end, our names from God dictate how will we truly be and what's our fate. And yeah, we already talked about that. And that's how, again, Rumi sees this. He names men thus according to their end, while for their present state a name he'll lend. So he's like, we have then obviously, um, so there's two names that we have. One is the name that is our true name, and the other one is something that actually describes our present state. That is an interesting analogy. So let's just say that, for instance, as humans, we are one of the names that we have is, or we give ourselves, is that we are free. And that is the name of, that was given to us perhaps by an attribute of a name that descended from God, which could be, Nasr or Piru or victorious all the time, or happy, or things like that. Now, again, what we think and how that has been totally the truth which is behind that name is something that we don't know. However, we have accepted the name that was given to us. So Rumi is trying to say that, for instance, if your name is, I don't know, George, you are just George, but the true essence behind you is, for instance, you are a warrior. The closest thing I can actually think through this is, for instance, when you look at the culture of the Native Americans. You know how they named each other, right? I mean, for instance, they name each other by a specific attribute or action. Okay. And that is the truth of that person. But, or for instance, the guy's name is Dances with Wolves because he dances with wolves, right? But you could call him Mike, and that's fine. But again, there is a true attribute that is assigned to that person when it comes down to names. And remember, Rumi is trying to tell us that each of us also are given that name. However, from a masking perspective, or in the front, we are called something different. Okay. I'm not trying to confuse you, but again, this is it's gonna eventually kind of show up. And in the end, so he says, and in the end, our names from God dictate how will we truly be and what's our fate. He names men thus according to their end, while for their present state, he'll, a name he'll lend. When Adam gained the light of purity, he then perceived souls and reality. So when he's saying that, basically when Adam was able to actually see the light, and he had to go through, that exercise and what he experienced at that time to actually go through the forbidden fruit and so forth, then all of a sudden, when the light, and this is the light of God, when the light of God was just basically, shone upon him, then Adam was able to see, what the reality, or in this case, what's the truth. This should have been truth. What is the soul of people and their truth. God's light in him, when angels could observe, they felt prostrate and vowed that they would serve. And basically, once he was enlightened by the light of God, he was able to actually enlighten the angels, and angels all, bowed down and, bowed down and respected Adam. If I recount the virtues of this son, and this son is now referring to Adam, and basically the virtues that he gained and experienced, through the process of creation. If I recount the virtues of this son, the end of time will come before I'm done. So it's like, what has, unfolded upon him and what he has experienced is something that is, totally, out of this world. My question is this: as we read this creation of Adam, and what Rumi is trying to tell us, that how he was created and what was presented to him and how he experienced this light of God, and how he's experienced seeing the mysteries behind these names and so forth. What does this really tell us about us? Is this really about Adam?
Mm-mm.
What is it?
It's us.
Okay.
That's how when God gave us the ability through Adam, is how the knowledge every 5 years doubles. People learn more. People create more. That's how we can go to the moon, and we can invent and things like that. All because of that the God gave Adam the names at the beginning.
And Adam, again, so if it's us, then God gave us the names. We
Right,
are the descendant of Adam. So God
So-
gave us. So literally every single one of us are exact copy. I mean, this is not a system that, for instance, a copy is not exactly as the original or something like that.
Right.
It's I think it was years ago that there was a movie that
Is that multiplicity?
yeah, that's what I was thinking. Multiple. So what's the guy's name?
He's Batman. Remember
Batman. Yeah, he was Batman, and he also it was Birdman, and he won that. He won an Oscar for that one too. But yeah, he was like, he first copies a guy, and then he realizes I can copy another one, and the second copy was not as good as the original. So, anyways, it's so the fact that multiplicity. I mean, you guys got to watch it. It's actually a funny movie, but it's got an interesting concept to it.
I think to make the distinction that really is talking about us, at the beginning, God could have chosen, for example, to give to lions, for example, what he gave to Adam.
Oh, we're gonna get there real quick as far
Yeah.
as what happened. So hold on.
Okay.
Yeah. Again, but what it is that in our essence, we are all the same. So again, Rumi is trying to also tell us that the story of creation is that we are all. That's why we say all men are created equal. I mean, if this is something that has been, let's say, I think this is in the U.S. Constitution, right? All men have been created equal. That statement is actually a very, very wise statement, and it is completely synonymous with what Rumi has said. Is saying here, and what we also have read in the Quran. From a creation perspective, we're all equal. We experience different things, of course, when we come to this earth, and that's just how this earth has been basically constructed. So when Adam gained the light of pure, so we went through this. Okay, God's light in him, when angels could observe, they fell prostrate and vowed that they would serve. If I recount the virtues of this son, the end of time will come before I'm done. But though he was so wise, when fate decreed on prohibition, Adam failed to heed. So this is important because he was a wise person. He taught the angels all the names. However, he then still, took the forbidden fruit. And this is a very, very important part of this, story that we've got to remember. So it says, is this to be forbidden? That seemed odd, or is interpreting allowed by God, or is interpreting allowed by God? So this is basically what went through Adam's mind. So again, let's think through it. So it's Adam being created. He's given a life. He's given a breath from God's breath, and he has a spirit and a soul now, and he now has all the divine knowledge within him. And now he is in the Garden of Eden. He's walking around, and all of a sudden he gets to the one thing that he's been told you should not be eating. And then he questions, right? He questions, is this something that I should not eat, or can I interpret that? So what happens here? At this instant, what's happening? What is Adam discovering?
Is he finding the will of God? That
Free will.
What say again?
Free will.
is it?
Free will, exactly.
Yeah.
So he's discovering free will. He's discovering choice.
Yeah.
That, wait a minute, I actually do have a choice.
Yeah.
So again, remember the whole story of lion and the rabbit is all about people who believe in free will and choice versus people who believe in destiny. And Rumi is trying to tell us that from the get-go we were given that free will. From the get-go, we knew it. So in this case, he's like, but he was so wise when fate decreed. So this was also his destiny, that he needed to experience and realize choice. And the moment that we experience choice, that's when we start experiencing our ego and our mind, because our choices are totally bounded by that. When you start choosing, like when you choose whether I drink this or that, again, it's your mind and your ego, kind of telling you, oh, this one is cooler, this one is sweeter, this one is sour, this one is hot, this one is cold. What do you like? All of a sudden, you have a choice. So is this to be forbidden? That seemed odd, or is interpreting allowed by God? Since he tried to interpret on his own, he couldn't have forbidden fruit alone. So in this case, he's saying that when he tried to interpret it by his own, and his own interpretation was like, well, he couldn't leave forbidden fruit alone. So why is it that he couldn't leave it alone? Because his ego was right there. It was like, they told you not to eat it. You can eat it. It's right here. Take it. Nothing's going to happen. Just take it. Like when a gardener stepped upon a thorn, a thief snatched all his things and then was gone. The gardener soon climbed down and found relief, but saw his tools were stolen by the thief. Now, Rumi is now trying to use this example as we make choices, and our choices sometimes get us to be more, and more and deeper, into our ego, and which basically, takes our vision away, and we can't quite understand where is it that we are losing ground. And because of our choices, we now have to do something about it. So just like the choices that we make sometimes are a thorn in our foot that we have to take care of. And once we're trying to take care of that, other things will pass us by, or other things that actually were helping us. So the gardener soon clamped down. So finally you get the thorn out and found relief, but saw his tools were stolen by the thief. Oh Lord, we have erred. He said with heart aflame. So what happens is Adam, once he was, this is basically where, Rumi is, giving us a pointer around when Adam is told that, he needs to leave the Garden of Eden, he repents and he takes responsibility. So he says, in reality, it's there is an ayah in the Quran. It's let me find that out for you real quick. This is actually much better if you could see it there. So this is what he said to God. Right. So he says, they said, "Oh Lord, we have wronged ourselves." So we wronged ourselves. If you forgive us, if you forgive us not and bestow not upon us your mercy, we shall certainly be of the losers. This is where, of course, now Rumi is, using this ayah here, and he says, this is what they said, "O Lord, we have erred." He sighed with heart aflame. We lost the way as soon as darkness came. So we just lost the way. And the darkness was within themselves because they didn't know that their ego, how dark or how where he could take them. And these are dark places that the ego can take them. So destiny can block the sun's bright light, turn lions into mice because of fright. And that's what happened to Adam. In this case, this is destiny, blocking the sun's bright light. And in this case, the sun's bright light is the light of God. So remember, earlier in this story, Rumi is trying to tell us that once the names were given, the only way that Adam was able to see and realize the meanings behind these names is because the light of God was with him. So since the light of God was with him, this is where he was talking about this. This is where he's talking about it. So when Adam gained the light of purity and then perceived souls and reality, God's light in him, when angels could observe, they fell prostrate and vowed that they would serve. So this all happened because the light of God was with Adam. In this case, what happened is that, however, because he wasn't aware of what choice or what ego can do to him, he made a choice. And of course, all of those that he had originally been given was taken away. And now he had to earn his way back into it. So destiny can block the sun's bright light, turn lions into mice because of fright. If I don't see a snare by God's decree, I'm not the first who can't see destiny. So in
Got
this
tired
case,
of going on tangent. Now he's getting back to hopefully. That's what happened to Hod.
that's true. That's true. So if I don't see a snare by God's decree, I'm not the first who can't see destiny. Now, again,
That's what. Yeah.
that's where Hod,
Corral told him, "Why are you getting
or
caught?"
yeah,
Yeah.
Hupo tells Solomon that if the gods, if that light is not there, then I can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
Blessed is the one who follows righteousness, who gives up all his power for lowliness. So in this case, it's like it's better for us to follow a righteous path, and lowliness in this case is like in front of God, or in the before God, we realize the greatness and the the mightiness of God, and also we realize how weak we are, and have that type of also relationship or communication with him. If fate should dress you up in black like night, still it will help you in your hardest plight. So it's like, if there is and sometimes life is like that we think that everything for us is just dark. So it's like, if fate should dress you up in black like night, still it would help you in your hardest plight. If destiny should try to murder you, first it makes sure that you'll be born anew. So it's like, even if you feel like destiny is trying to get rid of you or get rid of something, in this case murder is not necessarily the right word. The word is that it starts attacking what you feel certain about. So sometimes this happens in our lives, that what we feel very certain about, all of a sudden comes under attack, or all of a sudden it comes to our, it puts us in a bad, disadvantageous position. It's like, first, and this is just how Rumi sees God. First, it makes sure that you'll be born anew. If it waylays you, hurls you in a ditch, a tent for you in heaven will pitch. So it's like, if you feel that yes, there is a something bad is going to happen to me, and I'm going to lose a specific way of life, or I'm going to lose a specific thing that was given to me. So it's like, if those things happen to you, just be sure that something else is awaiting you. And this also is we remember, Rumi is also using his explanation earlier to us, that our world is a world of opposites. We have opposites in this world. People will, again, experience opposites. People will be like, you would have some hard days, and you will have some, nice days. And that's just how life is supposed to be. It's just like that. But as you're having the hard day, you should be grateful. And as you're having the, tough days, you should just be, you should surrender and be faithful. So by frightening you, know that he's being kind. In his safe kingdom, space for you he'll find. Even if something frightens you, remember that God is kind. God is merciful. And in his safe kingdom, space for you he'll find. There is a safe place for you in his kingdom. This talk remains unfinished, but it's late. Now listen to the tale while I narrate. Now, let's get back to the story of,
Lion and the rabbit.
Yes, see how that is. Any questions about what we just went through and what we discussed? because I know it was a short passage, but we spent quite a bit of time on it, which was necessary. I just want to make sure any questions, any specific comments.
Let's go to lion and rabbit.
I guess, yeah. I can't be that good, seriously. I mean, this is all. You guys are being too kind. All right. So the hare steps back from the lion when it approaches the well. So they're about to, remember, they're about to go to the well together, because the rabbit has been telling the lion that there is another dude in the well, and that guy is he's been asking for you, and so
He's been bad mouthing you.
exactly, and he's been bad mouthing you. So now the lion, of course, this is his ego shows up, and he's like, I'm the only one who's supposed to be the king of this jungle. By the way, apparently that guy has got a rabbit hostage. So hey, you better go take care of this if you want to be fed next, other days, and so forth. So the lion now approached the well they'd found, but saw the hare retreat and turn around. So the hare is actually kind of walking behind them. And the lion realizes that this guy is not keeping up with him. Why is it you retreat, hare? What's wrong? Don't stop like that. Come forward and be strong. The hare screamed, "Oh, my feet have fled from me. Oh, my feet have fled from me. My soul now trembles and desires to flee." So basically, it's an expression, my feet has fled. I mean, that's like, I'm too scared to just walk beside you to this place. Can you not see my face has turned so pale? About my inner state, it tells a tale. Look at my face. Any face can tell you stories about somebody's inner tale. I mean, about his inner state. So Rumi fully believes in this, that we are creatures, that what happens in our inner soul and in our heart, somehow it would transpire itself on our faces. And our faces are basically, they emit and resonate an energy and a wave or a ray that would carry that energy. And this is the same thing that, for instance, when you see somebody, or when you see a person who's trying to sell you something, you come back and like, oh, you know what? I don't think if I want to buy this from him, because, it just doesn't feel good, or something like that.
He gave me the heebie-jeebie.
Or he gave you the heebie-jeebie. Yeah, there you go. Yeah. So since God has called the face since God has called the face a telltale clue, on this the mystic focuses his view. So this is also something that in the let me show you. It's Surah Araf. So it's on the same surah that we were in, but a different. Yeah, let me bring this up. So he's referring to Surah Araf, the verse 46, which says that, and between them will be a barrier screen, and on Al-Araf, a wall with the elevated place, will be men whose good and evil deeds would be equal in scale, who would recognize all of the paradise and hell people by their marks, the dwellers of paradise by their white faces, and the dwellers of hell by their black faces. They will call out the dwellers of paradise, Salamu alaikum, peace be upon you. And at that time, they, men of Araf, would not yet have entered in paradise, but they will hope to enter with certainty. So basically, this is where Rumi is getting this from. يَعْرِفُونَ كُلًّا بِسِيمَاهُمْ. So sima means, the face, and يَعْرِفُون means like people who are, they know of people and so forth. So people are, can be recognized by their faces. So since God has called the face a telltale clue, on this the mystic focuses his view. Color and scent, like bells, make you aware. The horse's neigh informs you that it's there. So it's like other stuff like colors and scents are things that are supposed to make you aware of something. Just like when you hear a horse's sigh, you know that a horse is around or close by. The sound of each thing thus gives it away. A door's creak differs from donkey's bray. So it's like everything has a sound, and a sound is an indication, is a clue. Just like, how when you hear when a door creaks, it sounds different from a donkey's bray. The prophet said, in judging people's souls, a man stays hidden till his tongue unrolls. And this is also a hadith from the prophet, that unless somebody has spoken, he is, you would never know what he's all about. That's true. Yeah. So that's why you want, for instance, your presidential candidates to talk. Once they talk, you know where they're coming from. So a man stays hidden till his tongue unrolls. Complexion also shows what's in your heart. Have mercy on me. Plant love that won't part. So it's like when you see someone, their complexion also tells you what's within them. And in this case is, Rumi is saying that have mercy on me. In this case, he's asking for mercy so that, just he's not judged by all of these things, or at least there is a window into his heart so that, that's actually a more direct way of knowing someone. A bright complexion is your thanks applause. A sickly one denies love and withdraws. So the difference between the bright one and a sickly one. I face the one who so now in this case, again, the rabbit is now talking. I face the one who pulls limbs out of place and saps all trace of life out of your face. The one who breaks all things, he goes inside, uproaring ancient trees, however wide. So he's now trying to, again, get this, poor lion to kind of, get all worked up about this other dude and all. That one who traps you, then declares its mate. Man, beasts, and plants might follow his dictate. Though these are small things, big things fall as well, becoming pale, filled with a rotten smell. So now he's like, he kind of switches now back. He's trying to tell us that in this world, things also give you a specific, again, the smells can give you a specific way of knowing something about people or something about where you are. The world now holds back, then shows thankfulness. The blooming orchard once knew nakedness. So he's like, this is something that is part of life, irrespective of how we think, because so now he's telling us that while you hear how life shows up, or how life actually kind of brings in certain level of awareness for our surroundings and so forth. The fact of the matter is that not everything is supposed to manifest the way we think, just like how the world holds back on the what do you call it, uh, the world holds back on the on some of his nice things, and for a while it actually shows you just nakedness, and that's like when you go through fall and winter, for instance. The sun, which rises up with flames of fire, then sinks head first when it can't go up higher. Now, again, he's now referring back to the opposites again. He's like, everything in this world has a beginning and an end, and also a up and a down, just like the sun, which actually rises and also falls. The stars shine while the lofty heavens turn. Each single moment they are caused to burn. So in this case, it's like uh, they are the stars are up in the sky, and they are there for us to see. And when the sun comes out, they're supposed to go. The beauty on the moon is cherished most, but when it's sick, it looks more like a ghost. Just like the moon, it actually shows up when it's the beginning of the month, and towards the end of the month, it just starts going away. Um, the earth as if through manners keeps so still, but tremors make it shake as if it's ill. And in this case, he's talking about the earth, and he's like, the earth, um, we think it's completely still, but sometimes because it's ill, and in this case, he's referring the word ill or illness, meaning the fact that that within our bodies, when we actually are feeling ill, that means that there is something that's out of place or out of balance, and as the body is trying to balance itself, or perhaps do certain course corrections, we don't feel well, because of course, our body goes through the transformation that it's supposed to go through, and the work that immune system does, and all that stuff. This is exactly where he's also saying that sometimes the earth does the same thing, and it just has to go through and show some illness. And we are seeing earth's illness these days more and more. So many mountains, through sheer agony, were crushed to piles of dust so easily. Again, another example. So nothing is for certain, nothing is for sure. Everything has a polar opposite of each other, of itself. And that's how just life is. Life is rotating. The air, which was the soul's associate, turned stale and sick when fate commanded it. So it was like, even uh, the air that we breathe, it's like so nice, and something that we really like, but if it's commanded, that's the key word here. So if it's commanded, it's going to turn stale and sick when fate commanded it. Now, the fate commands, and in this case, fate is also that will of God that Rumi is talking about. So the will of God, sometimes, we like the wind as it actually breathes through our faces when we go to the beach and all that. But when the wind gets a little too heavy, none of us are going to stick around, and you pick up your chairs and you start going towards your car. So this is just how life is. Again, it's a balance. It has a polar opposite of itself. But now he's starting to put together a specific variable called fate. Sometimes fate is telling the wind to get a little harsher, to go a little faster. Water, the spirit's skin, was sweet to taste, but turned so bitter, left in pool of waste. It can happen to water. The fire puffed up with pride in its flame's head. I'm sorry, the fire puffed up with pride its flaming head, but soon the wind pronounced that it is dead. Now, if the wind is too harsh, it can actually kill fire as well. Although the wind is something that we need in order to actually flame the fire. So it's like fire is something also that can, um, just by itself, it's actually nice. And the flames are, utilizing what's coming to them from the air and the wind. But then if the wind gets a little too harsh, it can just topple that and get rid of it. So he gave us an example from wind, the fire, the water, and the earth, which are the four elements that, Rumi uses a lot. And he's telling us something about these four elements, the fact that these four elements are opposites of each other. Every single one of them can cancel each other. Okay. From turbulence that strikes the ocean tide, you can detect the torment that's inside. Sometimes, when a tsunami comes, it's a turbulence that strikes the ocean tide. You can detect the torment that's inside. The wheel of heaven in its search rotates and thus acquires its children's changing state. Now, the wheel of heaven in this case is is I don't think if that's the right translation, but again, he's using this as wheel of heaven. The reality is the wheel of this whole solar system. It just keeps on rotating, and in this rotation, it can give us a good state with the right omen, or with a fortune, and it could also bring us a bad state. Those of you who know astrology and all that, that's basically, I mean, there is certain truth about astrology, about the energies that actually come to us from the skies. But in this case, he's also looking at it from something that, as it actually contains a lot of opposites within itself, it also gets that as an opposite, and it's pretty fun. It just makes life fun. So first low, next in the middle, then up high, armies of bright stars decorate the sky. So your stars, if you have those of you who've read astrology, the first thing that somebody who shows up with their stuff, and they take your name and birth date and hour that you were born and all that, the first thing they tell you is that what's your rising sun and what's your descendant sun, or something like that. And this is what Rumi is referring to. So first low, next in the middle, then up high. It just happens for all of us. Armies of bright stars decorate the sky. If elements like these you all consist, to try to know their state you must persist. So he's like, if in order for you to discover more and more, you have to start understanding the element that these things have within themselves. Okay. Since all of these are filled with pain and grief, of course you're pale and thinner than a leaf, because of all these opposites in you, like earth and fire, the wind and water too. So he started with telling us about how this world is created from the opposites. And now he's telling us that because the way that we are created, and our bodies are created also from these elements, so we are also full of opposites within ourselves. We just have a lot of opposites. That sheep should flee the wolf should not seem strange. So he's telling us that if you see a herd of sheep and a wolf attacks, it's not a strange thing when the sheep start running away. And now he says, but when the wolf's kind greetings they exchange. I'm sorry, but when with wolves kind greetings they exchange. So it's like, to us, to our mind, it makes sense when a wolf is attacking the sheep and the sheep start running away. But what doesn't make sense for us is that when you see that the sheep and the wolf are in the same place and they're exchanging kind greetings together, meaning the fact that they're living with each other. Why is he telling us this? I'll tell you in a minute. Living is reconciling the opposites. This is the best line that I can actually give, as far as when they say, like, what's the meaning of life? And he's telling us this right here. Living, or life, actually, the meaning of life is reconciling the opposites, while death is when war starts because of splits. So he's telling us, he started, remember, from just the creation of Adam. Then he went to the creation of the heaven and earth. And then he started telling us the creation of this whole solar system, and how all of these created elements have got opposites within each other and with each other. And then what he's telling us is that these opposites get to live together in a harmonious way. And by the way, we are created from the opposites. Even in our bodies, these opposites, exist. And our body functions with these opposites being friends with each other. I mean, think about your body. Your body consists of many different, of course, elements, chemical elements, and neurons and electrons and things like that. But what's interesting is this, like, for instance, your stomach produces acid in order to actually digest food. But that acid, if it actually gets to your skin, it's going to burn you. So the opposites are living with each other in a harmonious way to actually serve you. And that is the biggest thing. So he's now taking this and giving us a definition for life and the purpose and the beauty of life, which is, I like to do this as life is reconciling the opposites. This is how life is. So anyone who wants to create splits between what these opposites are created, how, when these opposites are living in harmony, basically the second line is not, it's a very bad translation, actually. It's a very bad translation. Sorry. Let me just do this real quick. I'm going to redline this all the way. So it's like, death to whoever wants to split these opposites away from each other. That's what that next line is. So he feels so strongly about this, that in our life, the best meaning of our life is the fact that we live with our opposites. And whoever tries to bring division between them, Rumi is like death to that person or death to that thing that wants to bring division between them.
So division between the opposites, correct?
Of course. And in this case, opposites are either within us or in the world that we live in. Now, he uses an example. He's like, wild ass and lion feel close through God's grace, although each seem a very different case. He's like, in God's grace and in God's kingdom, these two animals, they feel close. They are experiencing different lives here in this earth, and they have to live the way they live. But, at the end of the day, he's now taking us from the macro level, from micro level to the macro level. And it's like, in God's eyes, we're all the same. There's really not that much different. The world is trapped and suffers otherwise. That it must die should come as no surprise. So he's like, if this world is suffering, and now he's referring to the world itself, because he's also trying to somehow, I in my opinion, and I'm not gonna get a real sentimental about this, but in my opinion, Rumi is trying to tell us that even this world has to, again, the balance and the equilibrium that exists between these opposites is what makes this life, meaningful and joyful. But when these balances are taken out or are, messed with, then you've got a death that is needed in order to actually create that balance again. And we see that. I mean, right now, those of us who hear, arguments about climate control, for instance, when they're talking about that, the case that they're, trying to make is the fact that there is a disorder that has been created, which is not natural. And the fact of the matter is, we can live life like this and we would just be fine until one day the nature decides that, this disorder now has to come to an order. And once it has to come to an order, it will do anything and everything that it possibly can to create that order, which it would result in human suffering and human loss, life loss and destruction and all that stuff. It's inevitable. It's going to happen. And Rumi is like very much aware of it. And he's like, hey, this is what this is. So the hare recited wisdom of this kind. It was because of this I lagged behind. So now apparently the rabbit said all these stuff to the lion. All he had to say was that, hey, I'm scared and I can't come to you. I don't believe that he said all these things. But Rumi says that's what he said. So any questions, any comments about this section? Because this is like the harmony between the opposites. Living is our life. I really want to call this life. Life is reconciling opposites.
I wonder if there's any connection between this concept and the expression that opposites attract in English.
I'm sure there is. I mean, the fact of the matter is that opposites attract because they want to create a whole.
Yeah.
I mean, it's something that, we've got to look at it from perspective of, as we're trying to complete ourselves, because we are whole, but we also want to create, we always want to go towards the better side of ourselves. And that's where, the opposites actually kind of, they get, they have that attraction.
In this passage, it says because of this, the hare says because of this I lag behind. Is there some kind of balancing, like is the hare also saying something about, I know the hare is trying to trick the lion, but is there some kind of balancing happening in their position also?
I haven't looked at it that way. So you're saying the purpose that the hare is actually staying behind is that balancing that he's trying to do?
Yeah.
I didn't look. I never thought about it that way, honestly. In all, in the grand scheme of this, I mean, the hare is trying to set this guy up to, like you said, trip.
Yeah.
And the hare is now a different character from the rest of the animals, because he is also exercising his free will, and he is now trying to figure out how is it that I can get this guy to be all revved up about his his ego being hurt. How do I actually just get that more and more sewed into him, so that this guy can make a mistake? So definitely he's tricking his mind. He's working with his mind. I mean, the hare is tricking the lion's mind and ego. I mean, he's just basically on that. That's where he's at the moment. So, okay, let's read a couple more passages. I think we got, yeah. Yeah, okay. So the lion asks why the hare has stepped back. So now it goes back to the beginning of that story. So the lion asks, what makes you sick? Tell me the primary reason that you want to flee. The hare replied, the other lion's there. It's like, this is obvious. The other dude is there. And out of harm's way in his well-hidden lair. The well's where every wise man wants his seat, to purify their hearts and choose retreat. Now, Rumi is now talking about that a well, or in this case, the well is something that would completely sequester you from the rest of the world, so that you could actually be there and kind of get yourself, let's just say, we call it, get your head re-examined and basically find out more about yourself. Basically, what happened to Joseph, and as he fell into the well, Rumi is, referring to that story in a sense that, he needed to go through that experience to actually rediscover himself as he was sequestered from the rest of the world. So that's why the well is where every wise man wants his seat. It's better. So now I think, this translation, I don't think if it's right. So it says, it's better than the darkness that's outside. The world outside can't keep a man satisfied. So he's saying that the darkness that you choose in a well is not the same darkness that you have in the real world. That is the darkness that has been basically granted. It's a grant. It's a gift from God when you are given that darkness in the well, and you get to actually kind of sit there and try to refine yourself and all that. So that's what I think so this translation is not true, does justice to the verse. The lion said, I'll knock him to the floor, check whether he's inside just as before, but I'm consumed by fear and want to. So he tells them that, hey, go and find out if he's still there, and I'm going to take care of him. Now the rabbit says, but I'm consumed by fear and want to hide. Would you perhaps protect me by your side? So it's like, I'm scared. Why don't you basically, kind of hug me, or at least, carry me with you? So we go together to the well. So generous lion, safe within your shade. I then can look down and not be afraid. So you're such a generous lion. You're awesome, and I will be protected by you. So the lion peers down the well and sees his own reflection and that of the hare. So the lion came and held the hare so near that he proceeded purged of all his fear. They both peered down to find the enemy. Their own reflection was all they could see, obviously. The lion saw cast on the water there his own reflection next to a plump hare. So remember that. So the it's like objects in the mirror are closer than they appear, or something like that. It's basically that. So he kind of sees a little bit of a different, rabbit in there, a little, more chubby. You know how they say, yeah, I mean, there's all these expressions. Camera adds 20 pounds, or, the mirror doesn't do justice, or whatever. So the lion saw the cast on the water there, his own reflection next to a plump hare. Thinking he'd found his foe, of course, his foe is his reflection. He then leapt in which meant the hare could go back to his kin. So the lion looked at it and thought that what he was seeing was his enemy. Therefore, he jumped in to kill his enemy. He didn't think twice. And basically now the rabbit was free to go back to his people. His foe fell in the pit of his own crime. Now, Rumi now starts to basically give us some punchlines here. I don't know if we have enough time for it, but we'll read a few and we'll get back to it next week. So his foe fell in the pit of his own crime. His sins came back to haunt him one last time. This is also a lesson for us. Basically, remember, he gave us a line, I think it was about a couple of weeks ago, that everything that we do are just, what we do, it echoes back to us. And we that just, comes back to us in a form of an echo or a, what do we call it? A response. So opposers' crimes are well devoid of light. All scholars have confirmed that this is right. The worst opposers dig a deeper well. Justice requires a fate far worse than hell. So it's like, the fact of the matter is that the more bad you do, in a sense, this is what he's talking about when he's talking about oppressors. I said opposers. That's a bad pronunciation. Oppressors. Oppressor is not somebody who is, it's basically whatever you do to oppress the truth. And in our lifetime, we could also be the oppressor of the truth. As oppressors' crime are well devoid of light. All scholars have confirmed that this is right. The worst oppressors dig a deeper well. So the worse you do, or the worst things that you actually do in life, it's basically how you dig in your well. And in this case, this well is gonna be your prison. The worst oppressor dig a deeper well. Justice requires a fate far worse than hell. For personal profit, wickedly behave, and you'll be simply digging your own grave. So there is a possibility that sometimes we actually, for personal profit, we have, taken somebody else's right away. And he's like, and you'll be simply digging your own grave. And that's just simple. Don't spin webs around yourself like a silkworm do, nor dig your own grave now without a clue. And don't imagine weak men have no friend. Recite when God's help come until the end. So he's telling us, he's teaching us a lesson that remember that everyone in this life, everyone you meet has a friend. And you have a friend as well. But every other person also does have a friend with them. And be scared of that. And in this case, he's referring to the Surah Nasr. That, he's like, yeah, why don't you recite that thing towards the end? When God helps come, because God's help will come. Iza ja'a nasrullahi wal fath. The God's, help will show up and you will prevail. The elephant whose enemy had fled then earned the wrath of birds in flocks instead. So in this case, he's referring to the Surah Fil, which was tells the tale of the Yemen's king who wanted to go and destroy Kaaba and in Mecca, and of course the elephants would not move from a certain point, and eventually the birds threw stones on them and they killed all of them. A weak man who requests security will hear war cries from heaven's Calvary. So he's telling us something here, that we are weak people. We are. I mean, we get cold, we get hot, we get sad, we get, happy. I mean, in a daily basis, there's so many different emotions that goes through us. And as these emotions, they manifest itself in different actions that we do. And it's like, remember that your request for security will hear war cries from heaven's Calvary. So in God's kingdom, they actually see that God will see that you have been asking for help, and everyone starts kind of getting in line to help you. If you should bite and make him bleed, you'll earn a painful toothache. Then where will you turn? He's just giving an example here that if you actually turn around and bite somebody, that means you instigate some harm on some person. There's a possibility that you will actually see what comes back to you in form of a toothache. And it's like, remember where you're going to turn. You will turn towards somebody who can actually help you. And then back then, of course, there weren't any dentists, remember? And most of the time, they would basically go back and try to pray or do some homeopathy stuff to, get their tooth fixed. There wasn't any root canal or anything like that. So either they had to pull the tooth or somehow they would get something done. Anyways, I'm going to leave our lesson right here. I think because this is a long session as well. There is like a few other examples that he's going to bring in, and those examples require a little bit more time, and I don't want to get us to kind of leave him midway. This is actually a comfortable place to leave.
Good timing, because Biden just declared Michigan. So only he needs Nevada now.
I'm not going to say a thing. So Mahdi and Aziza and Sunny, your cameras were off and I let it go, but hopefully next week the cameras are going to be on.
Appreciate it. I do have one question.
You don't get to ask questions if your camera is up.
Good party here. No, but really, when it says recite when God's help comes until the end, is that I get what's before and what's after? Is that kind of like a, when you have messed up in really huge ways and you've spun everything around you and you've created your own well?
Actually, you don't have to let it get there. You know how they say, "Odu'uni astajib lakum"? There is that ayah which says, just ask, just call me up and I'll answer right away. It's very interesting, and I'm glad you brought this up. These formulas to him are so simple, and he's a firm believer in them. And we read these things, and we want to believe in them. We really want to believe in them. Okay. Problem is that, again, we've got a mind and an ego that, tell us that, oh, come on. I mean, what do you mean by this? It's just not possible. This is just, it's impossible to understand it. It's impossible to fathom all that. But he is, again, you have to look at it from his eyes. And he sees this. He totally, fully believes it, that, yeah, when God says, call me up and I'll answer, that's exactly what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Again, it's our fault for not for not believing in that and not using it. It's our fault. And he's trying to open our eyes to that. So you don't have to even be in a well for that. By the way, we create our own wells on a daily basis as well. Every time we go down a dark path on our thoughts, that's the well that we create. And all of a sudden we sequester ourselves into a specific place, and sometimes, and it happens to all of us. Sometimes, something challenging happens in our life and we're like, oh my God, this is the end of the world. What am I going to do? And nothing is going to actually, by the way, that later on we realize that, oh, it was all good. No worries about it. But it's a very, 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 very interesting concept that, human psyche does to us. And he's trying to get us out of our minds and get our heart to actually kind of exercise and warm up. Okay. Well, friends, have a great night. And I'm glad we actually had this session, although it was, the election is still not decided. But hey, I'm glad that we actually went through this.
I promise it will be by the time we meet next time.
It will be.
I have a feeling by tomorrow we know. I mean, Trump has to get all the other 3 that is left. And Biden needs only 1. And Nevada looks good for Biden.
It's going to be a sad day for you, Mohsen, going forward.
No, I don't. Again, as I said, I am a true believer. So it doesn't matter who comes. I'm submitted.
Have a good evening, everybody.
Have a good night.
Nice to see
Bye,
you guys.
Bye.
See you guys in the next regime.